Good morning, everybody. You're very welcome to the Guaranteed Irish Pharmaceutical Forum for 2022, sponsored by MSD, which we're absolutely delighted about. And the theme of the morning is Sustaining Ireland as a Location of Choice for the Pharmaceutical Sector. I'm Breed O'Connell from Guaranteed Irish, and you're very welcome to join us this morning. I suppose it's most important that I signal from the very first, we've had the highest number of registrations ever in a pharmaceutical forum since we've gone down this road and been online, and we're absolutely delighted with it. And a lot of that, and I have to thank MSD as our sponsors. They've been very generous, and it's been a game changer for us in terms of getting the engagement with the pharmaceutical and healthcare industry in general. And I think the more of us that are speaking on platforms like this, the broader the engagement, and the more, I suppose, diverse our conversations are going to become about pharmaceutical. Pharmaceutical, as you know, is a massive area for the Irish economy in terms of growth, in terms of innovation, and in terms of our strategic thinking going forward. They're a big game player, and we want to make sure that we're recognising that here in Guaranteed Irish. They take a seat at our board, and it's very important that they have that voice, and they link in with us from all the sectors across the pharma industry. Without MSD sponsorship for this, we really wouldn't have that broad and breadth, I suppose, of conversation. So it's really good, and we're really appreciative of it. Thanks to Mairead McCall for that, and also Mairead for joining us on the panel today. We're absolutely delighted to have you. Just to introduce you to our panel, everybody, Mairead McCall, as I said, is the Managing Director of MSD Ireland Human Health, and is also the head of MSD Ireland Country Leadership Team, which includes representatives from MSD's 6 sites in Ireland and key business areas. She's also the pharmaceutical representative on the board of Guaranteed Irish, and she's just brought it to another level, and it's brilliant to have you. And thank you, Mairead, for all your help and support so far, and looking forward to engagement today on the forum. Also, I'd like to introduce Dr. Thorsten Gieske, General Manager and Commercial Business in Janssen Sciences, part of Johnson & Johnson's here in Ireland. Thorsten began his career as an anaesthetologist and scientist at university hospitals in Germany and the US. He's a board certified anaesthetologist and pain therapist, and holds an MD and PhD from the University of Cologne. And I don't know why I struggled over you being an anaesthetist, because I can say it when you look at it on the paper that throws you off. Thorsten, we're absolutely delighted to have you. I know you're only 6 months with us in Ireland, and you're very welcome to Ireland, and we're delighted to have you as part of the conversation in Guaranteed Irish. And of course, our friend from Matthew Moran, Director of Biopharmachem Ireland, Matt, to all of the rest of us, from 1994 to date. Biopharmachem Ireland represents the interests of the biopharmachem sector in Ireland. Matt is a board member of the Active Pharmaceuticals Ingredients, known to you as API, Committee, and CEFIC, which represents the European API industry. Matt, you're very welcome. You've always been a great supporter of these forums, and they're really helpful, and thank you so much for your time. In relation to that, I'm not going to spend too much time talking about us, but Guaranteed Irish are committed to supporting all the sectors across Ireland, but particularly committed in driving these new sectors. And here's a sample of some of the value that the pharmaceutical sector is Great to see the breadth and the distribution of the pharmaceutical sector across the country. And I suppose I'm going to come to you first, Maria, if I can. Like when you look at the video there, and it's really put in contrast, you know, it's a stark realization of how important the pharmaceutical and healthcare industry is to us. What has been the contribution of the pharma and life sciences to Ireland? And maybe you give us an overview of its exact importance, I suppose, for the country.
Great, thank you, Breed, and good morning, Breed, and fellow panelists, and all of you joining us here this morning. Firstly, Breed and team at Guaranteed Irish, that's a really powerful video, and I'd just like to congratulate you on it. So, to your question, Breed, I'll just begin with a couple of numbers, a couple of statistics. So. Excuse me, the biopharmaceutical industry in Ireland accounts for 39% of national exports. It's a huge number. And what that means in monetary terms, in 2020, that translated into 62 billion. A recent PwC report stated that the industry employs over 45,000 individuals directly, with gross value added to our economy here in Ireland of 15 billion. And these figures are from before the pandemic, so they're probably a little out of date and maybe a little bit underestimated. So the continuous growth and development of the sector positions Ireland as the third largest exporter of pharmaceuticals globally. That, to me, that's a really stark statistic. You know, when you consider the size of Ireland in comparison to other countries around the globe, and to consider that we are the third largest exporter of pharmaceuticals around the world. This year, 35 new medicines for a range of medical conditions will be proposed. These conditions include things like arthritis, multiple sclerosis, psoriasis, and many forms of cancer, spinal muscular atrophy, and others. And these medicines could treat almost 17,500 patients here. Recently, the industry signed a 4-year medicine supply agreement with the state. And in October's budget, the government allocated 30 million for innovative new medicines. And this followed on from the previous year, where 50 million was allocated in the previous budget. And these measures are really important to patients, and they mean that patients can hope to have better access to the latest treatments. So, Breed, those are my numbers that I have, and the numbers that represent the pharmaceutical industry here in Ireland.
It's brilliant to get such an overview in terms of the sheer size. It's actually amazing to see how we've even grown and obviously become very relevant as a result of the global pandemic. Are there other figures or anybody else on the panel who wants to jump in there?
Yeah, I'm happy to, Breed. And yeah, first of all, you know, thanks for having me, and good morning to everybody on the panel and in the audience. As you introduced myself, you know, I'm in this role now for 6 months, and before I came to this role, I was in a global role in Johnson & Johnson. And when I was appointed to my role in Ireland, I was actually very excited, because from that global perspective, Ireland has an incredible reputation as a pharma, biotech, and medtech cluster. And Johnson & Johnson has an outsized footprint here in Ireland with 10 sites across 5 counties, representing all our 3 healthcare sectors. So we do pharmaceuticals, medical devices, and consumer health. And it's spread out. 90% of our employment is based outside of Dublin, in Galway, Cork, and Limerick, so really across Ireland. And Ireland is, what impressed me the most is the world's largest exporter of pharmaceuticals, and including 6 out of the 10 of the world's top-selling drugs. And a lot of these are biological medicines. So, you know, I see that pharma is moving very much from pharma to biotech. And these are drugs that are complicated to manufacture and require very advanced skills and technology. And that's happening here. This is the global hub for this kind of technologies.
Well, it's great to think that Ireland has created that niche for itself, but that hasn't come overnight. I know companies like MSD have been with us, and indeed your own, Thorsten, for decades. In fact, I know MSD is there longer than Guaranteed Irish, because I was informed of that a while back, and it's interesting to see that they have that legacy of commitment and roots planted in Ireland. Have you come across that, looking at that, Matt, from a perspective of businesses who are committed staying here, that we've actually found a niche in terms of our skill set? It's not just Ireland and its favourable rates.
Sure, Breach. In fact, last year we actually published a history of the industry in Ireland. So anybody who's interested in reading what is a fantastic success story, please contact me directly. Yeah, I mean, since I suppose the mid-1960s, the industry has been growing here. And what we've seen is a legacy of increased innovation, increased, I suppose, employment and economic activity. So back in the late 60s, you had companies such as Pfizer, MSD, GSK, so on and so forth, establishing what we would call chemical or API or active pharmaceutical ingredients manufacturing facilities way back then. And during that time, they've integrated forward into manufacturing a wide range of medicinal products, drug products, both sterile and non-sterile. And recently, we actually, I think, lobbied government hard back in the early 90s to look at biotech. And then we've seen an explosion of investment in biotech manufacturing throughout this century. And if we look at the capital investment by the industry in the last sort of 10 years, it's in between about 12 and 15 billion euros now. So that gives you an idea of the significant money going into the ground, which is very important, because as well as being an industry which is dominated by foreign direct investment, it's an extremely stable sector. And the level of investment that the industry has placed in the country, I think, is very important for government, both through the payment of taxes we pay. I mean, multinational companies pay around 15 billion in corporation tax, which has been very important, especially during the pandemic. But it's this security which this industry brings, I think, is very important. And it's one that we work very hard on in Biopharma Chem Ireland to ensure that each factor that's needed to keep this industry here is known by government, and that we work hard to ensure that we keep our place in the world, as it's been rightly pointed out by Thorsten and Mairead, which is a leading location for this fantastic industry.
Yeah, and one that often doesn't always get positive praise, so it's important to really stress that. It's the security of it and the consistency of it, and as you say, there's a safety piece in it. Thorsten, I'd love your perspective on the challenges that exist for pharma in Ireland, particularly coming in with a global and a fresh pair of eyes. What do you see those challenges as?
Yeah, thanks for the question. It's one thing I noticed is I'd say there's a bit of a disconnect within government policy towards the industry in Ireland. Because on the one hand, Ireland is home to this remarkable pharma, biotech, medtech industry that has grown to become one of the most successful life science clusters in the world. And state support and policy has been key enablers of this. Yet, while we pride ourselves on being an island of innovation in manufacturing, Ireland has become a laggard in Europe for patient access to new medicines. So since 2012, Ireland has diverged from other countries and has now among the longest delays of reimbursement of new innovative drugs in Europe. And just as an example, patients in Ireland are waiting 1.5 times longer than those in England, 3 times longer than our Benelux peers, and 4.5 times longer than Denmark, which is a peer in terms of population national income. So as a result, a study last year by IQVIA showed that only 35% of medicines licensed in Europe, and as I said earlier, many of those made in Ireland, are available to be prescribed to patients in Ireland. And that's where I feel Ireland could benefit from a government vision that looks at the pharma and life science industry holistically, including manufacturing, but also clinical research and domestic health service, in order to drive this, I want to say, ecosystem that Ireland could actually benefit from. And I think there's a short-term threat to it, because there will be post-pandemic pressure on healthcare budgets. And although it is great what Mairead mentioned earlier, that 30 million have been assigned to innovative drugs, there could be pressure on these budgets, and that would be false economy and could risk actually reversing some of the great strides that have been made in recent years. So I think it's also, coming out of this pandemic, it's also a critical moment right now where I think the government needs to be ambitious, to not just say we want to provide healthcare and now how can we save some money that we spent during COVID, but how can we provide the best healthcare? We have this amazing cluster here in Ireland, so we would be able to provide the best healthcare to Irish patients. Yeah, that's a second, a short-term threat. And lastly, I think what we're already seeing is there's a new generation of drugs being developed currently, that's cell and gene therapies. And these are addressing some of the most intractable diseases, types of blood cancers, and in some patients, they might even offer cure. And you may have heard of the term CAR-T, so a chimeric antigen receptor modified T cell. So you take immune cells from the body, cell engineer them, infuse them back, and they attack cancer. And that's a one-time treatment, and it's engineered in a lab. And Ireland is already well behind in the curve in terms of these cellular therapies. We're close to the last country in Europe to reimburse CAR-T therapies. Late last year actually came the first reimbursement. The UK, in contrast, reimbursed their first CAR-T in 2018. So for Ireland to be in the running for these new generation of drugs, we need to ensure these treatments are available for patients and for clinical research in Ireland. And there's an ambitious vision by the government to say we want this best healthcare to be available to Irish patients.
Okay, well, that's actually kind of shocking in lots of ways. Marie, talk to me about your perspective on that in terms of the challenges that we're facing here in Ireland, to add to Thorsten's point there.
Yeah, so absolutely aligned and agree with Thorsten's points that he has raised there, and it's absolutely crucial that we have the correct policy environment in Ireland, and that we do have that ambition as a country, not just to have the delivery of healthcare, but as Thorsten said, be ambitious to have the best healthcare, leveraging the very strong presence of our industry here.
And it strikes me that there's a wealth of experience. Every time we hold these events, we feel there's a huge wealth of experience and a desire to be first and to win some ground on that space. And we have experienced that in production. It seems a shame that we can't seem to get it at the other end. Matt, what are your feelings in terms of how to move past that block? How are we going to achieve that?
Well, I mean, Thorsten referred to cell and gene therapies or advanced therapeutics, and he's right. It is the, I suppose, rapidly evolving area of therapeutic solution or effect. On the manufacturing side, we are looking to attract investment into that area. A couple of companies have already established some manufacturing suites, and in fact, the chair of our organization, Paul McCabe, is heading up a new contract GMP manufacturing facility for cell and gene through APC, an Irish and Indigenous company, actually. So we see it as an enormous opportunity. But Thorsten is right, you do need to have joined up thinking when it comes to life sciences. So there's no use in us developing very sophisticated manufacturing suites to deliver these products if they're not available to Irish patients. So I think a holistic approach towards a life sciences strategy is important. We have asked government to consider the establishment of an Office of Life Sciences, which we believe would help, and that gives you a more integrated approach towards how you approach therapeutics and healthcare. At the end of the day, these products makes people's lives better. I think they provide more cost-effective healthcare, and as a country, we need to embrace them. And then certainly on the manufacturing side, we're doing it, and we recognise the need that it has to be joined up thinking. Otherwise, I don't think it won't work in the long run. And I mean, Thorsten's also right. There is a huge opportunity for clinical research in this country, even clinical trials. We were way behind the competition in that regard. So I suppose it's sometimes catching up with the manufacturing base. We need to really look at doing that as a country to give us a good long-term future for the industry.
And I suppose we need to remember the old adage, we have to speculate to accumulate. So the government maybe needs to look at, there's probably a cost in this initially, but the objective is, I suppose, let it allows us, it positions us.
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, we're working with, there's quite an active group in Cell and Gene, which has been led by NIBRT, which is the research institute out on the UCD campus. And they plan to expand that operation shortly to include a suite which will be focused towards cell and gene or advanced therapeutics. So yeah, absolutely. Agree 100%.
While I have you there, Matt, what continues to attract the FDI, I suppose, investment into the pharma sector in Ireland? I know we're very good at the production side, but are we making it easier to choose Ireland over other countries at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, Ireland remains a very attractive location for the industry. And we are seeing still significant capital investment taking place. Interesting that AstraZeneca actually announced, I think, one of their first manufacturing facilities in the world, as far as I know, which will be located in Dublin. It's an API facility which will be on the site of what used to be Alexion, which was acquired by AZ recently. So it is very positive, and actually you hear often about the, I suppose, big ticket announcements when a company establishes a major new facility. I mean, for instance, both Janssen and MSD have made significant investment in recent years. But behind that, there's continual investment taking place, capital investment, which allows companies to stay competitive and innovative. It's a very, very competitive business, manufacturing pharmaceuticals. Cost is very important. Innovation is very important. And now sustainability is important as well. We have to sort of look to have a zero carbon footprint by 2030. That's what most companies are trying to do. In Biopharmachem Ireland, we have a lighthouse project which is actually led out by J&J at the moment, supported by the IDA, where we're looking at moving companies to a concept we call Factory 5.0, which is 4.0, which is probably known to most people on this call, digitization of manufacturing. 5 means you include sustainability, and also you bring the employee to the center of what you're trying to achieve. So our vision for the industry is that the entire sector should move to the 5.0 standards. So it should be sustainable, digitized, and should keep the employee and, I suppose, community to the very center of all they do. And to that end, we are currently working with a local company called Pharma, are looking at measuring the maturity of a number of sites with regards to where they are in this journey. And I know that both Janssen and MSD have been involved in this exercise. And we would like to see the entire industry, API industry, drug product industry, and also biotech or biologics move to that next plane, because it's only by doing that that we keep this industry in this country. And so we need to be a lighthouse, I think, for the sector globally. And by doing that, I think we can achieve and use that again to persuade government to really take this industry seriously.
And Thorsten, from a global perspective, again, if I can, where does that position Ireland in your thought process there, on those points that Matt has just made?
Well, it positions Ireland as a leader in sustainability. My company is also, very concerned about climate change, J&J globally, and its effect on environmental and human health. And climate change is already impacting health in a myriad of ways. We all know this, and the World Health Organization calls it the biggest health threat facing humanity. So what we're saying is, a healthy patient needs a healthy environment. So we appreciate that high-level thinking and the role that Ireland plays in helping the world adapt to these consequences of climate change.
And Marie, can I just ask, from your perspective, when you think of Ireland, MSD is so committed and rooted here, and you have so many sites around the country as well, giving great regional employment, and you're bringing a real mix to the table. What are your insights in terms of why companies like MSD are so committed to Ireland as opposed to going to another destination?
Yes, Breed, as you say, we have a significant presence here in Ireland. We started out with our very first manufacturing site over 50 years ago, and that was in Ballydine in Tipperary. And we've grown from that to now having 6 sites across Ireland, and to date we've invested approximately 3 billion, and we continue to invest in those sites as well. You know, another figure that I often highlight as well is that 50% of our top 20 products are actually manufactured here, you know, and we export those to over 60 countries around the world. The reasons why Ireland is attractive are many. You know, we really have a very well and proven track record as a successful location for high growth multinational companies. 1/3 of multinationals as well who have been here in Ireland have been here for over 20 years. So that goes to show you the longevity, the resilience and the commitment that these companies have for Ireland. We're renowned for developing and nurturing talent, and we're also an attractive destination for talent coming to Ireland as well. And we attract very highly skilled people to the country. The education system as well is really, really critical, and it's often cited as being one of the best in the world. There is a really high percentage of adults in Ireland who hold a 3rd level qualification, and there's a high number of students currently enrolled in STEM subjects at universities. So that is a really significant part of that attraction for companies like MSD and like Janssen.
And I suppose it's hard to not touch off the question of recruitment and retention, because that's a top question with everybody. And with such a massive shift in, you know, the hybrid, the road to the hybrid working place, is that having an impact, and is it positive or negative? I might just get a quick sounding from each of you on that.
Sure. I mean, I can jump in if you want, Breach. I mean, there's two questions there really. I mean, talent is vital and is a continual challenge for the industry. Attracting the right people, retaining the right people. So you have to ensure that work conditions are second to none. And in fact, we find recently we've invested a huge amount in workplace wellbeing initiatives, and in IBEC we have a Keep Well initiative, which I think is now critical to retain, especially younger employees. Obviously, they need to be well paid, but they need a lot more as well. They need to see this company's commitment to sustainability and to community, as has been referenced earlier. In terms of pandemic, we kept the industry going right the way through the pandemic. So all manufacturing stayed. We didn't close any plants, so we didn't shut down any plants. We were able to keep going, which is quite a challenge, because we were manufacturing within a series of significant guidelines. To give you an idea of the complexity of it, we hosted a weekly meeting with every manufacturing site in Ireland to discuss the latest challenge that had come up that week in terms of keeping the lights on or keeping production going. And often these meetings are attended by over 100 people virtually. So we kept it going. We now see a number of colleagues returning to the workplace, certainly office-based colleagues who may have been off-site. So that's something that needs to be managed. Hybrid working, I think, is with us, and we certainly are encouraging employers to talk with their employees and come up with, you know, mechanisms that actually work for the business and also work for the employee. So there's great opportunity there, and I think that talent will be the lifeblood of the industry, and it behoves us to keep our eyes firmly set on that. And I agree with Mairead in terms of the I suppose our excellent educational system, the need to keep investing in that, and also the need to continually keep investing in training and development. And through Biopharmachem Ireland, we operate a full-time Biopharmachem skill net, which is supported by government and allows us to ensure that the very best of training is available to the industry. And recently, we've actually now stepped into delivering virtual training programs or using artificial intelligence and virtual training techniques.
And actually, I'm going to come in and make a point here that, you know, we hadn't discussed prior to this, but I did note with the pharmaceutical sector that we represent in Guaranteed Irish, throughout the pandemic, no more than all the frontline workers, and these are the guys who are not allowed to really be praised, because the pharma, for some reason, aren't allowed to take praise, which I think is grossly unfair. But it's great to the I don't know that modesty exists now in Ireland, to be honest with you, Matt, but in terms of, I do think the pharmaceutical sector really put their shoulder to the wheel, and they really delivered the goods when we needed them. And my goodness, didn't we need them in the last 2 years? And going forward, we're not out of it yet, despite people's celebratory feeling in the last few days. The reality is the pharmaceutical sector have manned up and really, I suppose, they've taken a big stand in saying, I'm doing our part, certainly for Ireland. So from Guaranteed Irish perspective, we're certainly grateful to the sector, and I think it's really important we get the voices together in the rooms and on these webinars and all the forums that we all host, and all push in the same direction. At the end of the day, you know, our health is our wealth, and unless we get those medicines to our patients, we can't help them. So while there's always budgetary arguments and things like that, there must be a way that can be found. There must be a forum for discussion where we can say, let's both make efforts to make this happen, but let's make it happen and not stagnate. And you know, that's a crazy situation when we have the talent in the island of this size that we have, and the experience and the commitment. And the pharmaceutical companies, the MNCs, are not going away, which is fantastic news, but let's not take them for granted either. Let's make sure that we're really pushing forward and meeting halfway. Have you seen that in other countries, Thorsten, where, you know, conversation just stops and it becomes pharma versus government? And what are the steps to prevent that and make this more positive? And you know, we're on the crest of a wave where we've all really worked together. Let's really keep that. I think there's a nugget there, and there's a window of opportunity for us all to push forward in a positive way. What have you seen in other countries?
Well, I want to say the discussion or the alignment between countries and the pharmaceutical industry, of course, is always in the process of the reimbursement of drugs. And I'm talking because I'm a pharma guy. I'm talking mainly for pharma, but it's a little different in the medical device area. But it's always, of course, you know, what is the investment into new medicines, and when and how do we actually provide new medicines to the population. But in the end, you know, there's actually always a good alignment. It's a little hard to compare with Ireland because, as we said earlier, Ireland is this unique manufacturing hub. And here, the pharmaceutical or the medtech industry is in a very unique position. And it's just what I mentioned earlier. Sometimes you feel like giving the footprint that we're having in this country and the contribution we're providing to this country, that is what astounds me, that, you know, in terms of the reimbursement and the accessibility of innovative drugs, we're actually the last one in Western Europe. You know, maybe that shouldn't be, because I think, you know, these biotech ecosystem that actually exists here in Ireland, and like Matt mentioned earlier, if we're able to move up the value chain, include more clinical research, and include also the everyday patient care, collaborations with universities. Maybe somewhere, I don't have full insight yet on the biotech startup environment, you know, but I could also imagine that this could be a great environment for biotech startups who would then, you know, feed into the big pharmaceutical industry. I think that's a great opportunity for Ireland actually to move in that direction, and it's a very unique position to go there.
And Marie, can I ask you then, what do you see as the opportunities for reform and future success and continued growth and success for the pharma sector here?
Yeah, well, firstly, I suppose to build on some of the points there raised by Thorsten, and to go back to your previous question, Breed, just in terms of what can we in Ireland learn from other countries around the globe. And I think one of the key things that we can learn and we should learn really is around that sustainability of funding for the new and innovative drugs, many of which are manufactured here, you know, and really look at a solution for that, you know, something that will give certainty to both the state, and something that will give certainty to us as an industry, and indeed something that will give certainty to patients who need them. So I think in order to consider, you know, the future success of the pharma industry, we have to reflect on what has contributed to our current and our past success for the industry here in Ireland. You know, Ireland has created an environment that is stable, it's enterprise friendly and values education. And, you know, significantly as well, our continued commitment to the European Union is also a plus. And as Matt mentioned, you know, Ireland remains at the heart of that global API supply chain. But, you know, as we've already mentioned, you know, we need to ensure that this positive environment in Ireland is maintained. And this does include ensuring that the many groundbreaking medicines that are manufactured here and are delivered to around the globe, you know, that they are delivered to Irish patients in a timely manner. I think another area for development is something that Torsten mentioned already. It is around that life sciences strategy. You know, we need to ensure that we continue to build on our success. We need to plan for the future, and we really need to continue to improve our attractiveness, you know, to make sure that we are future-proofing our industry here. You know, the right policy environment is key to attracting new investment, and it's really important that we sustain our strength here. You know, I think Ireland, in terms of the attraction of the pharmaceutical industry here, you know, we're the envy of many other countries around the globe, you know, and many other countries are seeing how they can tap, how they can attract, you know, that high valued pharmaceutical industry, because they recognize the importance of the industry and the impact that that can have to their economy. So it is competitive, and I think, you know, we've seen over the last number of years how science has moved at pace. Our industry is moving at pace, and we need to make sure that Ireland moves at the correct pace as well, and that we adapt and we continue to evolve our approach to this really important sector here in Ireland.
I can't hear you, Breach.
I think you're muted, Breed.
You're muted, Breach.
Apologies. I'd be correcting you guys normally. So thank you very much for that, Maria. Great insight to that. Matt, do you want to add to what you see as the opportunities for reform in the pharma sector on top of what Maria said there? Is there anything additional you want to add there?
Well, I mean, I agree with everything that Maria has said. I think reflecting, I mean, as an industry, we work very hard to ensure that we stay abreast of innovation. We're a very well networked industry. In fact, the collaboration that takes place in this country is globally unique. And I've sometimes wondered, do government realize how unique it is? So we find often we look to our own capability and our ability to ensure that we have the latest investment, we invest in our talent, we look to ensure that we're competitive, that we're sustainable. As an industry, we're very happy to keep our shoulder to the wheel, but we do need help from government and recognition from government that they need to play a part too. And we work hard to ensure that the world is supplied with the very, very latest innovative medicines, and we'll keep doing that. But I think it's not much of an ask to ensure that patients in this country have access to the capability that we work so hard as an industry to sustain and maintain. So I think my appeal to government is look to us, work with us, but please recognize the efforts that we put in to have us in a leading global position, which should not be taken for granted. And both Torsten and Mairead are right. It's a very, very competitive world, and everybody looks to us as to how we succeed and wants to replicate it. I get invited all around the world to let them know how we succeed and compete. That's so they can compete with us. And it's an extremely competitive world for investment. And even within multinational corporations, it's competitive. So what we've achieved in Ireland is absolutely fantastic, but let's celebrate it, and let's be joined up and be sensible in how we approach how we deal with patients in this country.
That's absolutely fantastic. Thanks, Matt. I feel very positive on that. And I also think pharmaceutical and our healthcare and our scientists have become rock stars over the last 2 years coming out of Ireland. We've had some really good spokespeople, global representatives, and to note and recognise them. And if we're able to produce people like that at a global level who are making an impact, exactly your point, Matt, to celebrate them. And it's a real opportunity, I think, for the pharmaceutical industry. We certainly want to endorse and support that. On my final word, I suppose, before we take a couple of questions, I'd love to talk about things like collaboration and partnerships and opportunities for us to do more, not just Guaranteed Irish here at home, but also other organisations where we can all, as Matt mentioned there, you know, join up our thinking. And together, like our strapline right behind me is all together better. We are all together better if we push together. And I suppose the opportunity for us is to become one voice. So it's very strong. And I know since Mairead has joined us in MSG, has always been a supporter of Guaranteed Irish. They've really put a strong voice in pharmaceutical at our table, and it has really lifted the awareness amongst the other sectors that we work with as well. And I think there's a genuine pride coming off the ground here in Ireland on how our scientists and our medical, medtech, all the pharma industry and healthcare are performing. So well done to all of that sector. But most importantly, what can we do better and how can we be stronger and more unified? Thorsten, I might just come to you again and I'll whiz around the houses on this, maybe an insight from all of you on that. How can we do better?
Yeah, so this is a very good point, and I think you're absolutely right. I think COVID has actually shown how a common challenge, and then, you know, a whole case where it's about collaboration and not about competition actually leads to, you know, incredible success within 2 years' time. I think one backbone of this whole success was and still is the data. It's the sharing of the data, it's the access to data, it's, you know, and the data we all every day look at, infection rate, hospitalizations, deaths, vaccination rates, that is all real world evidence. That is all data that helps us to understand where's the disease, how severe is the disease, how do the vaccines work, where do they work and where don't they work. And this helps us to very quickly adapt and improve and get to the solution that we have right now. Now, that kind of data is not commonly available for other diseases, but it should be. And that means, you know, we need collaborators. We need, for example, universities have data, pharmaceutical companies have data, other institutions have data. Very often that data is not easily accessible or is not harmonized. And would absolutely support is a health data infrastructure in Ireland, maybe supported by electronic health records, you know, where a common access is granted, so everybody who needs knowledge and who can contribute actually has access to this data. That kind of health data infrastructure could really help, you know, drive the speed of innovation in all kinds of diseases, not just something like COVID when it becomes a global pandemic threat. And that's
Mairead.
just sorry, back to your question. In terms of collaboration, that involves, you know, all these different stakeholders and maybe to a big part also the tech industry. Yeah, because it's all digital.
And another sector we're very strong in Ireland, so there's no reason for not engaging. Mairead, your thoughts on that? How can we do better?
Yeah, I think, you know, we've proven really in many respects how we can do better over the last number of years. You know, we've seen a really strong collaboration, a really strong partnership between government, you know, academia and science and our own industry, you know, and it really has demonstrated, you know, that when we collaborate and work together, you know, we can advance science, we can advance, you know, innovations at pace.
Absolutely, we thought. Matt, anything else that there's out there we need to sweep up and improve on?
We can never rest on our laurels, Breed. A couple of points. Thorsten pointed to indigenous companies or local companies or startups. That's an area we're exploring quite actively at the moment. There is an opportunity for Ireland to mirror its success in foreign direct investment in biotech and in novel therapeutics. We're dabbling in it. For a long time we've been trying to promote I suppose, success. I mean, if you look to countries such as the UK or even to Belgium, you see very successful startup communities. And it's interesting that they're looking now at establishing a bioincubator actually out in Cherrywood in South Dublin, which could be a source for supporting the development of such companies. So like working with Enterprise Ireland, with Science Foundation Ireland, we're actively looking at that at the moment. The second one, and on the point of collaboration, manufacturing in itself, I think needs to be profiled, I think, more highly in the country. IBEC have launched a manufacturing report late last year. We participated and are involved in it. So this is bringing together biopharma, medtech, tech, food industry, property industry, all industries which can support each other and look to converge and to I suppose people often say, well, you have a very strong tech industry, you have a very strong pharmaceutical industry, you have a very strong medtech industry. What are you doing to get them to complement each other or to synergize? And in fact, for the Lighthouse project, we do have partners from the tech industry. Analog Devices, Siemens Healthcare are partners of ours. So we're looking to share that expertise. And we talk about managing data in the manufacturing context. We're not great at it. So we can look to our partners in tech to help us do that and to deploy smarter ways of utilizing technology to make manufacturing and healthcare supply more efficient, more effective. Again, the data it's all in the data, how you manage and how you respond and how you ultimately provide a better solution for patients and for healthcare in this country, which has to be our primary objective as a country, to make ourselves better and to learn from the pandemic.
Matt, to say, you know, with your project, your Indigenous hub there in Cherrywood, make sure that you can count on Guaranteed Irish as well to help support and profile. And I suppose just to throw in there, Guaranteed Irish is really a marketing and communications agency now for their business members. So make sure that if you're a business out there, and we have the highest registration ever thanks to the sponsorship of MSD today, attending this webinar, make sure you're using us, if you're a member, to get noticed. And, you know, your contribution to the community, your contribution to future thinking and your contribution to employment is massive, and it's not to be underrated. So don't think just because you're a pharmaceutical as opposed to a food or a tech or a professional services company that you don't deserve to get noticed. You do, and that's our job to profile you and allow us to do that and help us. That's one thing we're good at. We talk up our businesses, and we want to make sure that we're flying the flag on behalf of your sector as well. We do have a question in here before we finish off. Most of the questions have been answered, but what does sustainability in the pharmaceutical sector mean to you? And I suppose in a year of sustainability, which is our overarching theme for Guaranteed Irish this year, and we're certainly doing our best to work with our members in terms of reaching and mirroring the climate action plan that the government has asked us to work on. What does it mean in the pharmaceutical sector? Can I come to you first, maybe Thorsten, on that?
Yeah, because I represent the commercial sector of Janssen, I only have a high-level oversight on this, but I know that our manufacturing partners and the whole campus, J&J, is working intensely. For example, we have struck a deal on green energy, so that all manufacturing sites in J&J in a number of years will only be powered by green energy. We have set up wind energy generators. So as I said, for J&J, the policy of J&J is a healthy human needs a healthy environment, and clearly environmental sustainability is very high on our agenda.
And I suspect similar, Mairead, on your side?
Yeah, similar. As Matt said, you know, the ambition and the target is to be you know, carbon neutral by 2030, you know, and in MSD, you know, we would be ambitious in bringing that you know, ahead of 2030 as well, looking at various different sources of sustainable energy as well, you know, in terms of you know, exploring in terms of solar power and other sources as well. So a very strong commitment from MSD with regard to renewables and really exploring, you know, how we can be good citizens within the economy here in Ireland.
I have a really nice final question I'm just going to put to the panel, and it's something we've touched off and something I feel quite strongly about for the pharma sector. Given the experience of the pandemic and global recognition new drugs are playing in managing COVID, do the panelists have any thoughts on how to build on the current positive views the general public have on the industry? The industry has benefited from recent spotlighting, but how can we generate more understanding and appreciation of the pharma sector in the hearts and minds of people? Over to the panel. Anybody got an idea on that? I'm going to start by saying we'd love to profile more of the businesses out there who are working with us in that positive light. So we're certainly up for that. And Mairead, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I am, you know, and thanks for the questions that have come in so far. So I think it is an opportunity for us as an industry, you know, to really put forward our really strong narrative, and you know, build on that positive momentum that we have. If you look at the spread, I think of the industry around Ireland, you know, and I think, you know, within those communities, there's a huge recognition of the importance and the value that the industry does bring. But certainly, I think, you know, being involved in forums such as ourselves, our colleagues in IFA do a really strong job in terms of, you know, profiling what we do as an industry and the value that we bring, you know, to Ireland, you know, and the really important difference that we make to patients as well.
And Matt?
Sure. There is an opportunity, of course. Never has there awareness of pharmaceuticals and their products been as high, and even brand awareness has been this high in this country. So there's a huge opportunity. We will be bringing out an industry strategy in May we'll launch it in May of this year. It'll be our 5th industry strategy, and there we'll outline what we think the government needs to do to help to support and grow the industry. So we'll address all of the issues which have been discussed here today, from talent right the way through to cost competitiveness, the need to profile our manufacturing base, and also the need to ensure we have an integrated approach towards healthcare as well. And obviously we continue to support our friends in IPHA to ensure that we kind of have an aligned approach towards this industry, which we think is critical. So yes, we'll be out there, and we'll be taking the opportunity. We already have, obviously, but we'll continue to take this opportunity to ensure the industry receives the profile which I think it deserves, given its importance to the Irish economy as an employer, and also the fact that over half of the goods exported from this country come from this sector, either from pharmaceutical products or from active pharmaceutical ingredients. So this is an important sector.
Yeah, you've certainly earned your stripes at this stage, it has to be said. Thorsten, any final words on that?
Yeah, so the only thing I know is that, you know, what helps to have more visibility is more communication. So I appreciate forums like this, you know, where we can actually give faces to the black box pharmaceutical industry as it is sometimes perceived. And I think that is what makes it so kind of, let's say, unsympathetic, you know. But if people see, you know, that we're all humans and that we're all actually getting up in the morning, you know, for the benefit of society and not, you know, to the cost of society, I think that can actually really help to provide us with the visibility, you know, and use the momentum, as Matt rightly said, that we have after COVID, where the health education is at a level where it's never been before.
That's fantastic. Before I round up and sign off, I would like to ask our sponsor in the through Mairead, sponsor MSD, to maybe address the panelists and those who are in attending. We simply could not have done this without the support of MSD, and we really appreciate it. And look, we feel we're getting stronger representing you. Our job is to make you household names and make you more, I suppose, part of an understanding of what's going on in society. I love that approach you mentioned there, Thorsten, about the black box, but none of this could be possible without MSD support this month, supporting Pharmaceutical Month as we celebrate it through Guaranteed Irish. Over to you, Mairead.
Great, and thank you very much, Breed. And Breed, thank you for leading and navigating the conversation. You did a really top job there this morning, so thank you. You know, we've had a really thought-provoking and I think a very insightful discussion this morning. And I know, you know, I for one found the discussion hugely informative. I'd like to thank Thorsten and Matt for your genuine participation, and you know, for really bringing forward, you know, your insights and your particular viewpoints. So thank you very much for that. In summary, you know, I think it's already been highlighted many times, but I think it is really crucial that the pharmaceutical sector is recognised and indeed celebrated for playing such a pivotal role in Ireland. You know, we provide high-tech, sustainable jobs. We contribute significantly to the communities in which we work, and you know, we work really collaboratively with a whole host of stakeholders to make sure that this sector continues to go from strength to strength. However, I think as Matt highlighted, we can't sit on our laurels. You know, we need to consistently look to the future, and we need to plan to make sure that we continue to attract and retain the industry here. So I think, you know, I think we need to continue the conversation, and I certainly look forward to working with you to continue the conversation and to further our ambitions, and you know, really continue to contribute to Ireland generally. Finally, Breed, I'd like to thank you and all of the team in Guaranteed Irish for creating this opportunity for this conversation here this morning. I know you and the team put a lot of work into it, and I really appreciate it, and thank you very much.
You're very welcome. I'd like to thank the speakers, Dr. Thorsten Giska, I'm calling it, but I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, Thorsten, so do accept my apology in advance. Matt Moran and Mairead McCall, who represents Janssen, IBEC, I suppose, and particularly MSG as our sponsors, who we could not have done that without. I would like to say our job is in the area of familiarising consumers and other businesses, and indeed government agencies, as we are a lobbyist, to recognise the businesses that we represent and to recognise how they contribute to jobs, community and provenance across the country. Feel free to follow us and share with us. We have quite a few extra questions that I didn't get to because we're out of time, and we do stick to our times, and I think that's important for everybody in their busy and hectic schedules. But please do connect with us across all the various platforms, and we are there to represent and support you. Please be part of the community of Guaranteed Irish so we can do our best to help you get noticed. Thank you, everybody, and the session today has been recorded, and we'll be in contact with all those who registered with a copy of the recording, and we look forward to continuing the conversation. This is the start of our discussion this year, and it will only get stronger. Thank you, everybody, and good morning.
Thanks, Breed. Thanks, Mairead.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.